This is a great piece of property just south of Helena, very rural. We acquired it about 4 years ago, and it was not in the same kind of condition that you're looking at now.
It was a mess, and we looked at it as something we could enjoy in our retirement, but we also knew it would require a lot of work.
The owners that were here at that time were non-resident owners. They had been talked into selling some timber, I guess, by a logger. And there were trees that had been cut that were just left laying. And they had been that way for several years. What you're seeing behind is the greater part of the 10-mile Helena South projects that the Two Chiefs Initiative has proposed for a lot of work. The Chessman Reservoir is right in, just on the other side of that green cut ridge at the base of Red Mountain. And that supplies, millions of gallons to the city of Helena and a lot of the environs around Helena. There's homes all through this country. One of the concerns that we have in a real issue is what's called a principle of alignment with the gulches, the topography. Every one of these things is lined up to go right into the city of Helena, which is on the other side of that ridgeline over there. So a devastating stand replacement fire in here is way more than structure loss. That's a big loss to the entire community.
We talked with the Northwest management, and they came up, showed us what could be done, helped us find a good contractor.
This was going to be our plan in our retirement. This was going to be something that we were going to do and, sell a few logs and send them to the mill. And I've got a tractor and a saw, and oh boy. Well, we'd still be back there by the gate if it was us doing it alone. I was walking not too far from here, probably 400 or 500 yards from where we're at, and I fell backwards and I severed my quadriceps tendon. It became obvious that we weren't going to be able to do this on our own, that we needed to have the help, we needed a contractor, we needed some planning. The NRCS EQIP program was familiar to me because of what I was doing then in my civilian job, and an opportunity came up through the Two Chiefs Initiative, and I applied for it. We went with a cut-to-length system here, which means that rather than doing a whole tree skidding, forwarder follows the harvester, and they classify that as to what it was, a firewood log, a house log, or a merchantable log that's going to the mill. It's cut to the 20 feet length. You don't have a huge big landing pile down here that we had to deal with. It does generate a lot of little piles. We spent that first winter and then last winter, 2 winters in a row, just up here every day that we could burning piles. And we would do probably 25 or 30 a day, just my wife and I, Judy and I.
We got all that cleaned up. Now we're still facing some few piles that need to be burned, not very many. We've reseeded a lot of the piles.
They've been seeded now and are starting to they're starting to actually look pretty good. We had to make sure that we met the specifications that the NRCS had given us and that we were contracted for. So then we had to achieve that a minimum 20 feet crown-to-crown spacing, and as you went up in slope, then you got to 30 feet, and then as I recall, when we got to the boundary with our neighbor, the Forest Service, forest land, then we had to widen that even more to, I believe, 40 feet if it had any kind of a slope component. As we look at the burning characteristics of different kinds of trees, we know that we have to break that up to a certain distance in order to not have a contiguous fuel bed for that fire to go through. That lodgepole wants to have a stand replacement kind of burn. The ponderosa pine that's in here, would resist fire. It resists burning with everything it can, but once it goes big. The needles are light, the bark is light, it throws embers, an ember shower far ahead of the actual flame. So we had to be able to break that up so that the fire would go to ground and then not move into our neighbor. It'd be something that we can control. The other thing that you need to be aware of is the noxious weed component.
One of my big jobs is weed control. There's a lot of weeds. Some of the weeds in this area were probably 3 or 4 feet tall, especially thistle. They take the forage away from if you wanted to use it for grazing for cattle, for instance. They replace the forage as well as elk and deer and moose. And those animals are up here, and we want to see them remain here. And if the forage is gone, they're going to be gone too.
We wanted to achieve lower intensity of fire behavior, of the expected fire behavior. We wanted to, obviously, there's a tax component. We have to pay taxes on this, property taxes, etc. So we needed to generate some income, and then we needed to have it into a condition, in a forest health condition, where we can hand that down for generations. We're only the 4th owners of this piece of property since homesteading. We don't believe in just tying things up and not having use. But we do believe that that use has to be in a proper fashion, that we're only temporary stewards here. We want to make our next decisions on what our grandkids probably are going to have to live with in this, because it's our intention that this stays in the family now for several generations.